building in Islamabad, Pakistan, Foreign Minister Ishaq Dar is staring at two phones. One line goes to Tehran, the other goes to Washington. He is not a head of state, he is a courier, and what he is carrying right now, a 5-point Chinese-Pakistani peace framework, quietly drafted in Beijing just 48 hours ago, could either stop a war that has already killed nearly 2,000 people, or detonate it into something the world has never seen. There's a third person in this room. We'll get to who that is and why their presence changes everything in about 10 minutes. But first, you need to understand how we got here. On February 28, 2026, Ali Khamenei, the supreme leader of Iran, was assassinated in an Israeli air attack on his compound. Let that land. The man who had led the Islamic Republic for 35 years, the man who commanded the largest proxy network in the Middle East, the man who personally directed Iran's nuclear ambitions, gone. Iranian Defense Minister Aziz Nasirzadeh, IRGC Commander Mohammad Pakpour, and Defense Council Secretary Ali Shamkhani were all killed in the same coordinated strikes. In a single night, Israel and the United States didn't just hit a military target, they beheaded an entire government. Signal number one, this was not a surprise to everyone. Netanyahu called Trump on February 23rd to inform him about Khamenei's upcoming meeting with his top advisors and its location. 5 days before the strike, the intelligence was precise. Khamenei and his inner circle were above ground in the National Security Council offices in broad daylight. U.S. and Israeli military intelligence identified that senior Iranian leaders would gather at 3 meetings that could be struck simultaneously. 3 rooms, simultaneously. This wasn't a decapitation strike. This was a surgical annihilation. And here's what nobody is telling you. Just 1 day before the strikes on February 27th, Oman's Foreign Minister Badr al-Busaidi said a breakthrough had been reached. Iran had agreed to never stockpile enriched uranium and to full verification by the IAEA. Talks were expected to resume on March 2nd. Peace was, in the words of the Omani Foreign Minister, within reach. The American delegation in those talks included Steve Witkoff, Jared Kushner, and CENTCOM Admiral Brad Cooper. They were in separate rooms from the Iranians, with messages relayed through Omani diplomats. And then, boom, the deal died before the ink dried. After the US and Israel attacked Iran, al-Busaidi said he was dismayed and that active and serious negotiations had been undermined. Iran's response was immediate and massive. By March 5th, Iran had fired over 500 ballistic and naval missiles and almost 2,000 drones. Iranian missiles targeted Israel, US bases in Bahrain, Jordan, Kuwait, Qatar, Saudi Arabia. Iran launched strikes across 9 countries in the region. The Houthis in Yemen rejoined the fight. Hezbollah reactivated the northern front. By the 10th day of the war, Iran had fired a total of 300 missiles at Israel, nearly half carrying cluster submunitions, banned by over 100 nations, fired deliberately at residential neighborhoods. The war wasn't just military, it was psychological. Now, here's the catch, because the narrative just flipped. On March 13th, the Israeli military estimated between 3,000 and 4,000 Iranian soldiers and commanders had been killed. By day 10, Iranian missile and drone attacks had dropped by more than 90%, steeper than the 2025 conflict. Iran's military command structure was fractured. Iran's foreign ministry stated the military had lost control over several units, operating according to old general instructions. Iran was still fighting, but it was fighting blind, and Washington knew it. That's when the diplomacy started. In the dark, through back channels, using a country nobody expected, Pakistan. Since the launch of Operation Epic Fury, the U.S.-Israeli air campaign, Islamabad quietly but deeply inserted itself into the crisis, working the phones and holding meetings with key regional actors. Pakistan's Army Chief Field Marshal Asim Munir held at least one direct call with President Donald Trump. This is the equivalent of calling in a favor from a friend who knows both sides of a feud. Pakistan has done this before. They once served as the secret bridge between Richard Nixon and Mao Zedong. U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff confirmed that U.S. had presented a 15-point action list forming the framework for a peace deal, which mediator Pakistan gave to Iran. 15 points. Point 1, a 1-month ceasefire. Point 2, Iran hands over its highly enriched uranium stockpile. That's the 460 kilograms of 60% enriched uranium that Witkoff himself said could produce 11 nuclear bombs. Point 3, a halt to further enrichment. Point 4, curbs on Iran's ballistic missile program. Point 5, Iran ends support for regional proxies. Washington's plan also included a commitment from Iran to never acquire a nuclear weapon. Iran's response? Tehran's counterproposal called for a halt to aggression, concrete guarantees against recurrence, war reparations, an end to hostilities against Iran's allies, and formal recognition of Iranian sovereignty over the Strait of Hormuz. Iran wants to be paid for the war. Iran wants legal ownership of the world's most critical oil shipping lane, Let that sink in. The Strait of Hormuz moves 20% of the world's oil. If Iran closes it, and they have threatened exactly that, oil hits $200 a barrel within 48 hours. The S&P 500 drops 15% inside a week. Gas at the pump in the United States goes past $9. Every pension fund on earth bleeds. Iran demanded a guaranteed ceasefire to end the war permanently, not a temporary pause. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi told Al Jazeera directly, "We do not have any faith that negotiations with the US will yield any results. The trust level is at zero." That's not a negotiating position, that's a wound. Iran was attacked twice during negotiations with Washington, Araghchi said. Once in 2025, once in 2026. While talks were actively underway, why would they trust a third round? And now, the third person in that room in Islamabad. Remember them? Former Iranian Foreign Minister Kamal Karazi was seriously wounded when a strike hit his Tehran home, killing his wife. April 1st, yesterday. Iranian officials described the attack as an attempt to derail diplomacy, noting that Karazi was overseeing engagement with Pakistan for a possible meeting between Iranian officials and U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance. Think about what that means. Someone, and Tehran is pointing fingers at Israel, targeted the one Iranian official who was personally building the bridge to a meeting with Vance. The man running the back channel, his wife is dead. He's in a hospital. And the channel he was building is now a smoldering ruin. That is not coincidence. That is sabotage. That is the hardliner veto, executed with a missile strike. Pakistan's Deputy Prime Minister Ishaq Dar confirmed that Israel had Araghchi and Parliament Speaker Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf on its hit list. Pakistan urged Washington not to target these individuals. The U.S. asked Israel to step back. There are two men still alive in Tehran who can negotiate. Two, and Israel had coordinates for both of them. Pakistan literally called Washington and said, "If you kill these men, there's no one left to talk to." The U.S. told Israel to stand down. Netanyahu complied, for now. But here's what nobody is telling you. Israel is accelerating. A person briefed on the operation told NPR that the Israeli military is speeding up its targeting in Iran over the next 48 hours, focusing on hitting Iran's arms factories as much as possible in case a ceasefire is declared. Israel is racing the clock, not toward peace, away from it. Every factory destroyed before a ceasefire is a factory Iran can't use in the next war. Netanyahu's calculus is cold, rational, and completely at odds with Washington's diplomatic track. This is the internal friction, the hardliners' veto. Played in real time, China has now entered the picture. Pakistan's foreign minister met in Beijing with Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi, and together they produced a new initiative, a ceasefire in exchange for opening the Strait of Hormuz. China has a clear incentive. As Iran's top trade partner and the biggest importer of Iranian oil, a closed strait is an economic catastrophe for Beijing. China stepping in as a mediator in a war launched by the United States would be a remarkable geopolitical twist. Trump, asked directly about it, declined to criticize the initiative. He said diplomacy was going well. That non-denial is the closest thing to a green light we're going to get. Trump announced on Truth Social a 10-day pause on threatened strikes against Iranian power plants, citing a request from the Iranian government. Iran denied making any such request, but the pause is real. Hours later, Iran launched a new wave of missiles at Israel. 14 people wounded near Tel Aviv, including an 11-year-old girl. As of today, Thursday, April 2nd, 2026, Pakistan's Foreign Ministry spokesperson Tahir Andrabi acknowledged obstacles in mediation efforts. Speaking at a weekly briefing in Islamabad, hours after Trump threatened to bomb Iran back to the Stone Ages if it did not accept Washington's terms. The obstacles, he mentioned without naming. The gap is enormous. Iran wants sovereignty over the Strait of Hormuz and war reparations. The U.S. wants zero enrichment and proxy dismantlement. Those two positions are not close. They are not even in the same universe. The current death toll stands at approximately 1,137 in Iran, at least 24 in Israel, 13 U.S. soldiers, and 27 killed in Gulf states. Israel's health ministry says at least 4,564 people have been taken to hospitals since the war's start. An Indian worker was killed in an Iranian attack on a desalination plant. A tanker was struck off Qatar. An Iranian drone hit a UK military base runway in Cyprus. This war has already gone global in every meaningful sense of the word. Here is where we are right now. April 6th is the deadline. Iran has 4 days to respond to a 15-point framework it has publicly called irrational. Kamal Karazi, the man running the back channel, is in a hospital bed. China and Pakistan are pushing a 5-point alternative plan. Israel is bombing faster to beat any ceasefire. And Trump is oscillating between peace, overtures on social media, and threats to bomb power plants. The Strait of Hormuz remains closed to normal traffic. Every extra day costs the global economy billions. The next 72 hours are binary. Either Araghchi's phone rings with something credible, a real guarantee, a real pause, a real acknowledgement that Iran's survival as a state is not on the table, and some version of a deal begins to take shape. Or the April 6th deadline expires, the power plants get hit, Iran retaliates against the Gulf energy infrastructure, and a regional war becomes a global economic crisis overnight. There is no middle ground left. The couriers have delivered their messages. The hardliners are pulling triggers, and the world is holding its breath, watching two men, one in a hospital in Tehran, one on Truth Social in Washington, decide whether April 7th is the first day of peace or the first day of something far worse. Deal or bombs? That decision is being made right now.